Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, as always, Ray Harkins, back with another week of awesome conversation for you, the casual or fanatic independent music/culture consumer. Thank you. The guest this week is Mr. Glenn Harvey. He is a drummer for a upcoming band called Moose Blood. This is part of my shedding the spotlight on a band that might not be on your radar yet, but I promise within a year from now, they will be, and they could potentially be your new favorite band. Just going to go ahead and put that out there initially. More on him in a minute. Let's get some business out of the way, and we will, have a lot of fun. For those of you that have been donating to this show, I cannot thank you enough. I mean, it's unbelievable that people feel the compulsion to be like, hey, here's $20, here's $100, here's $5, here's $2. It does not matter to me. Basically, what it's doing, it's covering the costs. It is paying my producer. It is paying for the microphone that I am talking on. It is paying for the monthly fees it costs me to give this show to you for free. So if you're listening to this and you're just like, you know what, toss $1 down. That's great. You're covering yourself and some other people. If you're tossing $5 down, that's like next level. It's incredible. So anyways, donate to the show on the right side of the website, 100 Words Podcast. Do that, and it will help out greatly. Two people I want to mention in particular. Robert Castillon? I always will mispronounce last names. That's just a reality. Thank you very much, Robert. I appreciate it. And Tom Catalfamo? I will never pronounce your last name right. But it's cool because when people send in these donations, they also send in like, man, there's this awesome band from my local area that I think you need to, check out. And it just kind of gets that conversation started where it's like, normally I may not have ever heard of this particular band or artist or whoever that they're recommending. And again, that is why I do this show, to talk and interact and connect. It's so much fun for me. So thank you two for donating. You are awesome. And propertyofzach.com, visit them, our media partners. Something pretty exciting with them coming very soon, within the next month or so. I'm just going to tease it. Just put it out there. Review the show. Go to iTunes, type some sentences, drop some stars. It's been a little slow recently. You know what? I'm disappointed. For those of you that listen to the show regularly, let's do this, okay? Let's review the show. I just need that from you, okay? Like I said, it makes the show more legitimate. It pops up the iTunes charts, and yeah, it just helps out tremendously. And then email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. I'll respond to you, or actually I'll say promptly. I'm pretty good about my email. So email, let's hang out and talk. One more thing before I wanted to dive into the conversation with Glenn. You know those people in your life that are just, are in it for kind of a fleeting moment. So I'm going to take you back to when I was, maybe I was 18, 19 years old. Can't exactly remember. There was this girl that lived down the street from me. And I don't even know how we met. I think it was one of those things like she was pulling into the neighborhood. I was pulling into the neighborhood. We kind of gave each other like a what's up nod. Not like a, hey, you're hot sort of thing, but just like a, oh, you seem to be into some cool stuff. And for whatever reason, her and I started to hang out, never romantically. Maybe I had a little crush on her. She was a little bit older than me, but she blew my mind. So here I am, essentially a punk and hardcore kid. Honestly, not very cultured. I had exposure through, obviously music and these different political ideas and all that sort of stuff. But what she did, we went to LA one day and she took me to the Museum of Contemporary Art. And there was an artist named Barbara Kruger, who is a world-renowned political artist. Incredible work. She had a display there. Basically, this girl was only in my life for about maybe 6 months, and then she moved. We didn't keep in touch. This is pre-social network, mind you. So she introduced me to this amazing artist, this amazing museum. We also listened to, I'd never listened to Belle and Sebastian. She exposed me to Belle and Sebastian, a lot of other cool indie rock stuff that I just, I was becoming familiar with via, bands like Texas is the Reason and all those, rev bands that were my gateway into non-aggressive music. She popped into my head recently because I saw a Barbara Kruger exhibit elsewhere. These impacts that we make on one another's lives. And sometimes we're in a person's life for like a brief moment, but that impact will just resonate in the future and you won't have any idea what will pop up into your head. It's just so cool. And especially when it comes to art and culture, it's like these little jumping off points that one person can give you are just so unbelievably special and can just send your life off into some completely different direction that you never would have even thought about, or it'll just open you up to a new set of experiences, a new set of thoughts. And oh man, it just gets me so excited. And I love that I can still experience this and meet new people such as you, the listener, who are recommending cool stuff to me to listen to read or whatever. I just love that. So, don't take those people for granted that kind of, come in and out of your life that introduce you to cool stuff, because ultimately that's how we build our repertoire of how we deal with the world, of how we understand our place in it, how we relate to one another. It's incredible. So yeah, thank you, Lauren. I can't even remember her last name. Even more sad, I can't look her up right now to thank her. Yeah, Lauren, that's all I got. So anyways, let's talk about Glenn. Glenn is the drummer for this band called Moose Blood. They're from the United Kingdom. They are on a record label called No Sleep Records. They are incredible. It's one of those bands that just I listened to and immediately fell in love with. It wasn't like, I got to listen to this maybe 2 or 3 times, but it was just an immediate thing. And so what I did was, start to listen to them a little bit more and start to get to know the guys as I do some work with No Sleep Records. And there are certain bands that you just feel like have this interesting kinship where it's like you can tell that they genuinely love one another, and they genuinely love being creative. And I don't know, it's just it made me so inspired to want to speak to Glenn and kind of get the story of himself and the band and all that sort of stuff. So, anyways. Moose Blood's incredible. Glenn is an amazing drummer and a very good human being. So we discuss some cool stuff. Even if you don't give a shit about his band or anything like that, we talk about some pretty interesting stuff, like the main differences between the US and the UK. There's this huge divide, not only geographically, but in music scenes, in the way that music is perceived. It's super, super interesting. So anyways, here's my conversation with Glenn. I will talk to you afterwards. Yeah, obviously I always start these things off. It's just my own first personal introduction or impression. I don't even remember. I mean, I'm fairly certain that it was Stu who, showed me Moose Blood to begin with. I think just as a dude to a dude, I think you'd like this. And it was one of those things where it was there are always certain areas of the world that I pay attention to, musically, and the UK has always been something that's been because it's just such a weird environment. Yeah. It doesn't it produces bands that are clearly have no attachment to a scene, but become a scene band, and are immediately whatever. I mean, using a band like Bring Me the Horizon, they obviously have worked for years and years and years to get to where they're at now, and they came from a scene. But then there's the second and third wave of the carbon copies of Bring Me the Horizon that I don't know, it's just so weird. And then it can produce bands like you guys and Departures, where it's just there. I mean, even though Departures obviously technically isn't from but
close enough though.
exactly. But it was just it's always weird to kind of see there's such a for such a small island, how so many weird things can kind of come out of it. But yeah, so I just I remember listening to it and it was just oh wow, I didn't know that style of music had kind of made its way over there, so to speak, and not from an American being naive about it, but just because generally speaking, either the UK kind of is out in front of something and you guys are starting something, or it's maybe a year or two behind of what's happening with America. I don't know. So is it weird for you to kind of put your own band's perspective on a worldwide perspective, or is it weird for you to even compare yourself to other what's happening in the UK?
Yeah, it's weird for everything. I think to even because I remember the first ever review we got of the Moving Home EP was it said something about the Promise Ring, and I was like, Jesus, that's amazing that we didn't even get compared to that, because it wasn't even in our heads. He texted me a year before the band started asking if I wanted to play drums in a Tiger's Jaw kind of emo band type thing. And I was like, nah, man, I'm really busy, doing other stuff. I don't have time for that. And he waited until I was, done with the other bands. He texted me again, dude, start the band with me. So I'm so glad that he did that and waited for me. But, and then we started this up. And I think we were always just thinking, brand new, Take It Back Sunday, Tiger's Jaw kind of thing.
Right.
And obviously we all listened to, Knapsack and Mineral and everything like that. And that's when we started getting reviews, those were the influences that people were, noticing somehow.
Right.
Somehow through the music. And I was so stoked on that I didn't even, pick up on it when we were recording. I was just like, I want to put out a cool like punk rock record.
Right.
And it came out like everyone was saying 90s emo and stuff like that, and I was like, I'll take it, but I don't know.
Right. You're like, that wasn't like the initial like approach of what you guys were doing. It just kind of came out.
Yeah, definitely.
And so is it weird for you to like, because obviously, like, I mean, the UK in general pays obviously very close attention to what's happening in North America, but you obviously were aware of all those sort of bands, but I mean there isn't necessarily like too much of a scene in the UK for that type of stuff. It's like you guys and like maybe a handful of other bands, right?
Yeah, it's getting there. Like there's a, well, at the moment there's, I don't know, are you in that group on Facebook, the what was UK emo?
Oh no.
It's ridiculous, but it got like to a point where there were like, I don't know, 5,000 people in it, and it just became a bit over the top. But through that, you know, it's like more and more of the like up and coming bands that you might not have heard of.
Right.
And there's a lot going on, especially the DIY side of it. But yeah, for us, it was like I remember one show when like Annabelle and Dowsing came over, and then we got asked to play it, and I was so stoked to be able to play with like bands like that. Any bands on like County Lucky Stars or Top Shelf or anything like that. And,
right.
So it's always cool to be asked when there's bands that you like that come over, to be able to get the chance to play with them and stuff. It's awesome.
Right. You feel that, like, because I'm sure, like, regardless of how big the actual show is, you feel like it's a big deal because these bands are over here.
Yeah, for sure. It's the fact that, especially now, as we're like getting, I don't know, we're building up a bit of an audience, like especially when we play London, like it's always good shows there.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing that the bands that are coming over from America are really on a close level to what we're on, and we wouldn't be able to afford to do that yet. So like knowing that they've done it is like, you are losing money on this probably, and I really appreciate the fact you've made the effort to come here. And like are sleeping on floors every night and stuff. Like, it's ridiculous, but yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, it's cool that you have that perspective, because I think a lot of the times, I mean, I know that when I was younger, like, and bands toured, like the concept of touring didn't make any sense to me, because like you just feel like, oh, a band is playing. Like, a band's playing down the street for me. You don't really think of, like, what it took to get them there.
Yeah.
But then it's like, when you start to put in context of everything, you're like, oh my gosh, like, especially from, you know, touring the UK, where it's like, oh yeah, flights, and like, how to get around, and like, all these things that once you start to put it together yourself, where you're like, I see how much work this takes to like get to the show. Yeah,
it's like, wait, you got into the country with T-shirts and records as well. Like, how did you manage that? Like,
totally,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, how'd you get that past customs? and can you tell me how to do that?
Yeah.
But you yourself, you were born and raised in the UK, or like what city specifically?
I was born in Canterbury, which is where we're based now.
Okay. And where is that in relation to
like it's in Kent, which is like just like southeast of London.
Okay.
And I was born in Canterbury. I live in Herne Bay, which is a town just outside of it. It's like right on the southeast coast.
Okay.
So we got a nice stony beach there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's it. You have the beach to look at, but
not to enjoy it at all.
Right. Just be like, well, that's not only is it freezing cold water, but we have to scale a cliff in order to get down there.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
But so like everyone else in the band now as well is like based in Canterbury.
Okay.
So it's cool to keep that sort of homegrown thing. I really like Canterbury, so it's a cool city.
What's the vibe there? I mean, is it a big enough town? Is it like a suburb, or like what? It's
a big enough town. It's like it's got a university, so it's like a college town sort of thing. But yeah, it's weird in terms of music scene, because it's had a really good scene in the past. Like there used to be a Scout Hut thing, which I think was like a hardcore DIY venue. Whenever they could hire it out for that, and we had like American Nightmare and Converge play there in like the early 2000s and stuff like that. And then there was nothing for years, and then in like 2010 there was another little boom, and like a lot of the UK hardcore bands, because it was really a really good scene then, came through. And then we lost that venue. They had a dubstep night, and something happened, and they got shut down.
Wow.
So, yeah, fuck dubstep.
Yeah, you're like, God damn it, those dubstep kids ruined our shows.
Yeah, it sucks. But Canterbury can be really, really good, and it's good, like, supportive community there as well.
That's cool.
Which is cool.
Yeah, because I mean, it's my only frame of reference, because I've been to the UK like 2 or 3 times, but it was like, it's like, I know Brighton, and I know they used to do a festival up in the northern area, like, I think it was called Ghost Fest or something.
Oh, yeah.
What
Leeds,
city?
That would probably be.
I think so, yeah.
Leeds or Manchester, I think.
Yeah, just outside Manchester, I think. Yeah, because I remember when we were driving up there, because I was with the architects guys, we passed by the Manchester United Stadium, and and I was like, oh, that's a sport that America doesn't care about. I know Manchester United, but I don't know anything about it.
We were flying in on the plane as we were getting into Los Angeles because it was night, everything was lit up, and we were just seeing like baseball stadium after baseball stadium and stuff. Like, I was like, this is crazy. Like, we have none of those.
That's hilarious. Yeah, there are so many of these. It seems like every block there's a baseball stadium. We don't have one of those. That's crazy. I never thought about it like that. My frame of reference are only like these random towns, and it's like everyone to me is so distinctly different. Like
in such a small space.
Yeah. And it's weird because it's like you can travel, whatever, using Southern California as an example. There, I mean, LA is one thing, but then it's like if you travel to Orange County or San Diego, it's like it all kind of just feels like one big city. Like you can see little elements that are different in pockets, but not as much as like what I've experienced in the UK, where it's just like, oh wow, this feels really rural and farming community, but then they have shows here, I guess. Like it's weird. I don't know, but it's.
We were saying the other day as well, because we've driven around here a little bit just from being at the No Sleep office and coming up here and stuff.
Right.
We were saying you can tour the UK in 5 days if you want to.
Right.
You come here, like, I can't imagine touring the US. It seems insane. Like, we're in the same place still as we were when we got here, and we've travelled like hours. Like, I don't understand it. But I can't grasp how big it is. I was saying you could literally tour one state in like a week here. It seems like we would anyway.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like you can do a few you can do, 4 shows in California, and then it's like, then like some of the most just mind-numbing experiences are driving across like Texas.
Well, like you can, nothing to
you can fall asleep and then you can sleep for like 8 hours and you'll wake up in the same state. And it's like then you can drive across all of the UK and drive into the water for another like 3 hours. It's just crazy. It must be overwhelming to have that.
Like we've done that as well. Me and Mark were in a band called Take Courage, like a hardcore band who toured with Departures.
Okay.
And we toured with them. The last show was in Glasgow, where they're from, and we left the show and drove home, which is end to end from like Scotland to bottom of England. And we got back at like 6 a.m. or something, and we're just like, this is the dumbest thing to do, but like we're home now. I just get to go to my bed and I'm done.
Right. Yeah, and that's basically what it's like touring America.
Yeah.
So you have that.
Yeah, but that's just to get from venue to venue as well. That's like, okay, we need to leave now to get there for like sound check tomorrow. Like, I can't even imagine it.
Yeah. We got to leave really early. Yeah. So okay, the Canterbury is kind of a college town, and do you have brothers and sisters, or what's your family structure like?
2 brothers, both older than me by quite a bit. One of them lives in Scotland. So the whole rest of my family are Scottish.
Okay.
My parents moved down with my 2 brothers, I think the year before I was born.
Okay.
Because my dad's work.
Okay.
And my eldest brother Ross lives in Hong Kong at the moment. He's like a proper globetrotter. He's been everywhere.
Crazy.
It's awesome.
What does he do for work that takes him to these places?
He used to work in the Hard Rock Cafe. He was like fluent in Spanish, and he was picking up Catalan, which is I think the other language they speak in Barcelona as well. And he worked in Hard Rock, I think in London and then in Barcelona.
Wow.
Then he worked in a hotel out there, some 5-star hotel, and that's how he got his job in Hong Kong, I think, is through links with that.
Sure.
So that's
he's been all over. Yeah.
I'm pretty envious of him. And then Mark lives up in, he's a middle brother, lives up in Scotland with his wife. They've been there for like a few years now.
Okay.
He's just had a baby last year as well.
How much older are they than you?
5 and 7 years or something.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
So were you a pleasant surprise to your parents? Like, were they intending to have 3 kids?
Well, apparently, what was the story? My mum really wanted a girl. But yeah, 3 boys, she's bummed, man.
You were the last chance. Your mom was like, I would love to have a girl. All right, well, we have you, Glenn.
Yeah, that was a waste, wasn't it?
That's hilarious. Well, once you kind of, once you have a kid on your own, and like you just start to notice the patterns that exist within families, where you're just like, oh, if you see, it's like whatever, some kids are 2 years apart, and then it's like, and then if there's like a, like what you're experiencing, where it's like a 5 to 7 year gap, you're like, I think I know what the parents did. You just start to notice that, and you're like, oh yeah. And it's not a bad thing, because you exist.
Yeah, I mean, they put up with me as well.
You just weren't a girl, and that's okay. That is okay. It's a 50-50 chance, obviously. In growing up, your brothers were kind of already either gone or out of the house, and not out of the house, but like you were so far disconnected, that you weren't incredibly close with them?
Yeah, my oldest brother Ross was definitely one of those people, because he's an MC as well, so he's really into drum and bass and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, I'm completely out of that world. I don't know anything about it, but I think he's quite well like known in that scene.
Oh, wow.
I've seen like festival flyers where he's quite high up. So he's
really?
But literally, I haven't got a clue. But,
so, but when you say MC, like a DJ or like
a I don't know, like
a host or something?
Not a rapper, but like with like the drum and bass, like he's.
Oh, okay, yeah. But
shows
how much I know about that as well.
Yeah, no, same man. he's offered me to come to, like, when he lived in Barcelona. I went out there with my mum to visit. I think I was like 16.
Yeah.
So you should come to the show, man. And I was like, it's like 21 plus, and I'm like,
yeah, you're like,
I know you can get me in, but it's not going to be fun for me.
Right, this is going to be a little weird for me.
Yeah. I guess when he was like 18 is when I was like at an age where I would have noticed him being around a lot more, but he was always sleeping through the day, out all night, and I just never really saw him that much.
Right. It's
cool because obviously now I get to see him whenever he comes back, so we get to make the most of hanging out and stuff.
Sure.
Which is all good.
Yeah, you get to kind of like, it is interesting when you do have that age difference, because you end up connecting later in life because you've both kind of gone on your own ways.
Yeah.
Like neither of you influenced each other, but you can kind of come back and like compare notes where it's like, wow, we were raised by the same parents, but have like done such completely different random stuff. Yeah. But like,
I hear things like my mum will say something every now and then that I'll be like, oh, that's true. I never noticed that. And like, Ross used to skate all the time, and I was like, I loved that, and I would always just watch him and his friends, and then I started skating because of him. I think. We never skated together, but right. It was like by the time he left, I was like, I'm going to do that.
Right, he planted the seed in you. I was like, oh, that was. I had fun watching that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And he had an acoustic guitar as well. I don't remember him ever playing it, but he had an acoustic guitar with a Union Jack painted on the front of it, like an Oasis style.
Right, of course.
And I think I got into Oasis because my brothers as well. It's probably the only musical link that we have between us. It's just that one band, and that got me playing guitar. I learned Wonderwall was the first song I ever learnt by Oasis. Classic.
Classic song.
Yeah, so he had quite a big impact on me without me even realising it. I think,
right,
yeah. Really cool.
Yeah, but going back to like, you wouldn't have realised it until later in life where you'd be like, oh, I see why.
Yeah,
I see why I did that.
Yeah, I see why no one else in my family is into music, but you're an MC, and like, maybe there's something there, I don't know.
And what did your parents do as you were coming up as far as their professions are concerned?
My mum, when I was younger, when I was in primary school, was a secretary at the school that I was at.
Oh, okay.
And she's a midwife now. I went to college, and she went to college at the same time. She quit her job and went back to college to train to be a midwife.
Okay.
And she worked really hard for it, and so that's what she's doing now. I think she's really happy with that.
That's okay. Midwife is a person who helps deliver children, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that different here?
No. I mean, no. I mean, it's just I don't get the impression. I mean, does she like work in a hospital, or does she do like?
She does like house calls, and she works in a hospital as well.
Yeah.
She's literally like all over the place. She works the hardest that I know anyone to work.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
because a lot, I have no idea in the statistic, but it's like most people have kids in the hospital, and I know that there's a cottage industry built around people having home births and having midwives and stuff like that. But it never really occurred to me like, you have to go to college for that. Like, I guess, it's like, why would you hire, like, just a person that says they're a midwife?
You need a job, man.
Totally. I guess I'll be a midwife. And it's like, well, you have to know how to, like, do all the things to deliver a child. That's crazy. It never even occurred to me. It's like, oh, yeah, the people in America probably do that as well. Your dad
my dad, I still don't really know what he did. We moved down here, or they moved down here before I was born because of my dad's work.
Right.
It was something, I think, to do with insurance and banking and stuff. And now he works as a postman.
Oh, okay.
So he's at like retiring age roughly now. But,
right.
Yeah, he's working as a postman in Canterbury.
So do people? Because I always get this notion of like the postman in regards to like, he knows everyone's name and like his route and stuff like that, and he's like,
I don't know if he's like that or not.
Right. Like I said, it's an old notion of I maybe just because I love mail so much myself, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know my mail woman's name. Like, we're cool.
There's a go with my records.
Totally. I'm just like, maybe if I know this person, they will make sure that the records get through okay. Maybe that's my logic, but that's incredible. As you were kind of growing up, like, what did you find yourself, getting into? Like, did you care about school? You obviously, like you said, skateboarding kind of entered your life later.
I think I was like 13 when I started skating, maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't get on well at school, really.
Yeah.
I think I struggled through. I managed for the most part, but then I remember in the last year of high school, they, like, over the announcement speaker thing, they called like a bunch of people into the main hall for a meeting or whatever. and I heard my name, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't get called out on these things usually, so what's going on?
Right.
And we went there, and it was like, yeah, so you guys are basically not living up to your potential. And that's like all they said. I was like, shit. Like, that's not good.
And that was it? They just basically called you out to encourage you?
Yeah. No, they were like, you're going to have like a meeting with the tutor like once a week to check that you're on track, sort of thing. And I messed that up as well. I did pretty badly. But I ended up, I wanted to go to college for music because the music teacher, who was amazing, who was at my high school, left the year I would have finished high school to go on to like, we have sixth form, which is like essentially 2 years of college, but you stay at school to do it.
Oh, okay.
And I really wanted to do that, and I think 3 other people signed up to do it, so they cancelled the class because they were
because there wasn't enough interest.
Yeah. So I had to stay on to do like a business course to get the grades to be able to go to college because I got really bad grades.
Sure.
And yeah, I went to college to do music, and met a bunch of cool people there, and I think that was when.
Were you what specific, like, were you trying to like? Because I know there's obviously different disciplines within the colleges of music. Like, were you wanted to like be a performer? Like, hey, I want to play drums.
Yes,
like,
that's what it was. I think the year before I finished school, I started playing drums because I was in a band with Kyle, who's in Moose Blood as well. And I played guitar and only ever guitar before that, and he would play guitar as well. And he was like, "This band needs a drummer." I was like, I'll play drums. Why not? Like, I like Blink-182. I like Travis Barker. So I was like, I'll play drums. I'll try and be like him. Why not?
Right.
And it was way more fun. So I just like stuck with it. I went to college. Literally on the first day of college, they were like, stand up, introduce yourself, and say what you play. And the whole time, everyone in the class was saying it. I was like, am I going to say guitar or drums? Like, I don't know. I honestly hadn't.
Damn, that was like the moment.
That was like, and I was like, and I think maybe 6 people before me had said guitar. I was like, I play drums, fuck it. Like, I'm just gonna do it. I can be in a band if I do that with these other 6 people at least.
Right.
So, that was like the moment where I was like, I guess I'm gonna do this. And
that was like you were forced to make the switch. Like,
I was like, that guy's definitely better at guitar than me, so I'm just gonna play drums.
Man, that must so many thoughts that were swinging around in your head for that very moment to just be like, oh my gosh, I can play in bands with these other people, but like, that's funny. So you've technically only been playing drums for what, 5 or 6 years now, then?
How long is it? How old am I? Like 9 years, I think.
Oh, okay, 9 years. Okay, I'm getting
different college years.
I know, different. I always forget that. Different college and university, and like you said, music wasn't a very important part of your childhood in the sense of like your family structures. Like your parents didn't really care about it.
Yeah, my parents. I think my mum and dad listened to like the Beatles every so often, and they had their own like records to listen to, but it wasn't like pushed on me at all. I remember my mum as well actually saying to me, when I was in primary school, we had there was a guy who taught piano lessons, and one of my friends always had piano lessons, and I would always bug my parents like, I really want to learn to play piano, it would be awesome. And my dad wanted me to be into sport, and I didn't know this, but my mum told me recently actually. She was like, we were just sort of waiting for you to get into like football or something, or like soccer.
Footy.
Footy. I was like, man, Dad must have been bummed because I was just like, I want to play piano the whole time. I just couldn't get into it at all. And then I went to the high school, and I think on like the first day back, I was like, they do guitar lessons. I would love to learn to play guitar. And my mum was like, well, let's just do it because he's gonna bug us if we don't go with this. So I owe it to my mum really for caving in.
That's funny that they were resistant for you wanting to take piano lessons.
Yeah.
Like so many parents, like that's like part and parcel. Like you have to do that. You're just like you turn 10 or 11 and it's just like, oh yeah, you gotta do a piano lesson. Like you have to. And you were like, let me do that. They're like, no. You gotta get into football. We're gonna hold off for the minute.
Yeah, my brothers are really into football, so I think that's where that came from probably.
Got it.
But and then after that, I guess I got into like Blink-182 and stuff like that when I was like 12.
Okay.
And then it all like built up from there. Really.
Sure. From what I've noticed in the UK, is that most of like the music magazines and obviously basically all the press that is circulated around music over there is usually all like they're either trying to stir some sort of controversy up. It's always like very sensationalistic.
Yeah, it's like tabloid music magazines.
Totally. Yeah. Like, and I mean, even ones that are like obviously like reputable and huge, like they do quality work, but the work that they do is focused on that. And I find it so interesting because it's like there's very little attention that's actually paid on the music that it's creating and more so the people that are creating the music, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting because it's like, on one hand, that's cool because obviously you get the sort of whole picture of what a band is, but then takes away from like, what do they even sound like?
It's definitely weird, yeah. I saw it the other day, there's a music magazine who I think Run for Cover do that thing where they give like someone in a band on their label $50 to go out and buy some records.
Yes, of course, right.
There's a I think a magazine in the UK gave someone like $50 or a certain amount from a band to go out and buy some clothes and write about it in the magazine.
Wow.
And you just sort of think, it's a music magazine. Like, what are you doing?
Right. What, shouldn't this be in a fashion magazine?
Yeah,
like, shouldn't this be somewhere else?
Yeah, it's like there's a clear difference there between
yeah. And so you got into Blink. Like, were you paying attention to like everything that was happening in North America, or were there bands in the UK that you were like really gravitated to as well?
I don't think there were any bands in the UK really.
Really?
I remember, I think one of my first ever cassettes I got was like some pop like boy band who were from the UK. Okay. And that was when I still had like my brother's old cassette Walkman.
Sure.
Like, the foam head.
Yeah, the huge yellow one. Yeah, of course.
But yeah, no, I remember getting a friend gave me All the Small Things cassette tape single, and I was like, this is amazing.
Right.
I don't remember exactly when it was that I got into like more and more music like that, but I remember there was like a whole year assembly at our school, probably the first week or so that we started in year 7, which was like the first year of secondary school there.
Right.
And they had bands from the years above us playing songs to be like, to show what the music department can do and stuff like that at the school, to try and get you into different things, I suppose.
Interesting.
And one of them covered Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it was the first time I'd ever heard it. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. Like, a high school rock band covering it was the best thing ever to me. Like,
you're like, they're onto something here.
Yeah, this band's got something. But yeah, that definitely switched me on to like Nirvana, and I got really into the whole grunge thing and all that other stuff. And there was a music channel. I remember when we got Sky TV, because we didn't have it for ages. We got Sky TV. There was a music channel called P-Rock, which isn't around anymore.
Okay.
It was literally around for like 2 months, then it disappeared, then it came back for a month, then it disappeared again. And there were no adverts on it at all. It was just funded by whoever it was behind it, who was like, I want to play Lagwagon, Pennywise, Tsunami Bomb, like Descendants videos. It was like the best punk videos, back to back, non-stop. And I was like, this is incredible. I literally come home from school, put on that TV channel and just watch it until like my brother kicked me off the TV. Right. So that definitely had an impact. And then that was around the time of like LimeWire and stuff as well. So,
right. So yeah, you had the ease of access to where it's like, all I need is a name.
Yeah.
All I need is a name and some images, and then I'm able to kind of like draw it in from there.
Yeah.
Because I just find it's always so interesting to me, like the different cultures of how they're able to like consume music, you know, and like how the way that not only their specific towns but their countries, you know, completely inform, you know, how it is that they're able to consume, you know, music. And it's like, it's so, all that stuff, it's like, you know, whatever. I mean, Nirvana is like so easily accessible for us here in America. But then it's like, you know, you had to have a high school, like, and that was your entry point. It's like, otherwise you'd be like, I don't know, like I don't know when I would have found out about that.
That would have been weird.
But that wasn't a talent show or anything. That was basically just showing like
it was literally just showing what the school had to offer. And
Interesting.
I think that must have been when I was like, I want to play guitar. I want to be that guy.
But that it's funny because it's like, I mean, you strike me as a very like soft-spoken, like kind of reserved person.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you would immediately like. Were you like that at that age as well?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, I presume even more so back then.
Yeah, this is me out of my shell right now.
Yeah, you out of your shell is me defining you.
Yeah,
which is fine. And I always find it interesting when people that are like, you know, I mean, you're an introvert. I would classify you as. So you're introverted, but you see that and you're like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And probably not so much from the like maybe I want to be on stage, but I just want to create in some capacity.
Yeah, definitely.
Or what was... I
remember actually talking about that underachiever thing. One of my tutors saw me. We had like every now and then, if it was a charity fundraiser day or whatever at school, we'd have like school concerts, and I would always want to be like in one of the bands that played whatever it was. It was always just covers, Blink and Green Day and stuff. But the teacher saw me playing that show. And then the show,
of course, the show. Right.
And then the next day was like, because I had real trouble in exams, I would just panic and like I couldn't do it. I'd stress out over it if I'm staring at a paper and I know I've got a clock in front of me. I'd just completely shut off. And he's like, I don't know how you have the confidence to get out there and do that on stage in front of hundreds of people, because it was a busy hall as well. It was literally like most of the school kids would come in.
Sure.
And you just panic in exams, and I was like, I don't know what it is. It's something different about playing music that just takes you away from all that.
Right.
So I think I found that, and I was like, I want to do this because it's just an outlet.
You feel like you can kind of step into this. I mean, role, or I mean, I wouldn't even say character, but like you can step into this and feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Where you wouldn't feel comfortable doing anything like that in any other context of your life. Yeah.
Put me on a stage and tell me to talk, and I'll be like,
no. Doing anything in front of anybody besides playing guitar, like I'm not interested in that. Yeah, no, I always find people too that it's like, especially from like a guitar perspective, people have been like, you know, that's like their shield in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
Where it's like they feel like just that simple separation of like, you know, whatever, 4 inches of wood. It's like that's all they need in order to be able to do that. Did you feel any of that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Especially like behind a drum kit.
That's true. Yeah, that's a lot more.
Away.
Yeah, I get a lot more in between me. Instead of high school, you call it primary school? Or no, primary school is like...
Primary school's like elementary?
Okay, elementary, like 1st through 6th or 1st through 5th or something.
I think you finish primary in England at like 10 or 11 and you go on to high school or secondary school. Yeah.
Okay.
Until you're like 16 and you can go to college after that.
Okay, so 16 is when you're technically supposed to start going to university or college?
College.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to. There's a 2-year like buffer usually.
Okay, what you were talking about as far as like.
Yeah. Okay. It would be like college or sixth form, and sixth form is literally a college class essentially, but you're staying at your school and you don't have to wear uniform anymore. So
interesting.
It's a bit of a weird system, but.
And so, when you say you don't have to wear, do all high schools have to have uniforms?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, I don't know that all do, but certainly most of them do.
Most of them. Wow, I didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah, because I mean, primarily here in the States, it's usually like private schools or like there are things called charter schools over here, which are more like they're public, but they're highly focused as far as like, you know, federal funding and stuff like that. So they usually wear uniforms. But like most public schools, like don't have any sort of regulations.
So like the smart kids over here are probably in uniform. The
smart and or the more like privileged kids, that are going to private school. That's interesting. So that's funny that, especially just because the only reason I mentioned that is because you said we don't have to wear uniforms anymore, and I'm sure that's like so many kids. They feel that experience of like, finally I can get this crappy thing off of me. That's hilarious. And so then as you started to go into like secondary, like did you find anything that you were passionate about beyond like, you know, music and playing stuff, or like did you have any sort of vision on what you want to do besides like the music? I mean, like was music
that was your pretty focus? Much it. Yeah, I remember I got really lucky because like I said, we had like the best music teacher on maybe the second year, because once you get to secondary school you have to start playing like keyboard or piano or whatever just for music classes. You have to know like to be able to
how to read and whatever.
And my music teacher was always really supportive, and if you wanted to, you could go into the music block on like lunchtime and just mess around with keyboards and stuff, which is, you had like the music geeks hanging out there, and you had like whatever other people hanging out. It was all clusters of people over the school. I think on the second year, I remember the headmaster of the school came into our music class, and my music teacher was sat at the back talking to him, and I was just playing keyboard with everyone else. And he pointed me out, and he was like, Glenn is like very talented. I can't remember what he said, but it was like, he's got something. And I remember hearing it and being like, shit, you're talking about me?
Yeah. You're like, what?
And after that, the headmaster granted me a bursary for guitar lessons for an entire year. So I didn't have to pay for my guitar lessons. So my parents were stoked. And I was just like, this is amazing. And that was when I was like, this is something I would really want to like pursue, because it's incredible to play music.
Right. Like you felt something awaken inside of you that was like, this is what I want to focus on.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's, I'm sure it's interesting too, because it's like, you know, most people, especially that obviously end up getting into, you know, independent music, it's like their focus is never on like, oh, I gotta take guitar lessons. Like, it's like, oh, I just figured it out myself. I started playing, you know, whatever, power chords, and like that's kind of it. Yeah. And so it's funny that you have an intro point being very technically sound. Well, I mean, whatever. But I mean, but that's the intention. Yeah. Like you were being raised with that in your mind, without being, you know, I mean, I would dare say like polluted by the idea of like, oh, it doesn't matter that I don't know how to play my instruments. Like
I've never had a drum lesson in my life, though, because I did 6 years of guitar lessons. Right. And when I finished them, I was like, okay, I know some scales. I still don't know how to write a song, because for whatever reason, I was in bands throughout school. We could cover whatever songs we wanted to. I could learn a song by ear. Sure. I didn't have it in me to write a song, and it's still now. I try every now and then. I've got a few things written that I've like sort of kept hold of, and like, I'm never going to put out there.
You're like, there's a few things I have in my closet. That's it.
They're just for me. But yeah, I couldn't write a song, and as soon as I started playing with Kyle in that other band, I was like, drums, you just hit stuff. It's amazing. You just get to hit stuff, and it sounds good. So I was like, I'm going to do this, and so I've never had a drum lesson. Just through watching other people and listening to stuff. It was like, I think
so it just
really
kind of
it
just felt natural to you. I guess what I'm trying to say is the fact that I think it's cool that you didn't have that experience, because I do think that there's something to be said about being good at your instrument. Like, and I think a lot of people, especially like I said, that come from the, you know, punk and hardcore world. It's just like, oh, it doesn't fucking matter. Like that, and I the sentiment I agree with.
Yeah.
But I don't want to witness you doing that when you've been a band for 5 years and you're just like, you can barely put that together. You know, it's like there's no charm in it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like you've grown out. Like, no, you do that when you're like 15 or 14. That's fine. But, you know, when you're whatever, 22 years old and you're touring the country and you can like, you don't even know how to tune your guitar. Like, no one really needs to see that. Yeah, like, you know, you're not really contributing anything per se to the musical landscape. But it's just cool that you had to enter it from a different focal point. So when did independent music start to kind of, you know, even swallow you up more as far as like, you know, going to like shows that weren't concerts and that sort of?
I think the first concert was Blink-182, and that obviously Blink led on to a lot of other things like checking out like Fat Records and the Punkorama compilations and stuff like that. My mum and dad drove me up to Wembley Arena with my friends to go and see them. And I dyed my hair blue for the concert. Because, you know, punk rock.
Of course, dude. Yeah.
And I was like in the like seats at the back. Like,
right.
So far
but
away.
They'll notice it.
But yeah, yeah, for sure. So yeah, that was my first concert, and then after that, I was trying to think the other day because we got asked for that the Humble Beginnings thing. What my first like show was, and I had a really hard time remembering it for that as well. I know there's a local show. I don't know if you know a band called November Coming Fire.
Oh yeah.
They played it the year before I went. I remember sitting on the beach in Herne Bay with my friends saying, "Oh, there's this show today. Like, we probably should have gone to it. Like NCF, like this band."
Yeah.
Literally the week after that, I checked them out and I got massively into them, and they broke up.
Right.
And I was gutted, but then I saw them when they got back together a few years later. But yeah, that show was called Friends of All Nations, and that was literally a DIY, just a guy putting on like a hardcore all dayer.
Right.
And the lineup for that year was ridiculous, and we went the next year, and it was incredible as well.
Yeah.
And it was just like a 2 stops on a train from my house.
Oh wow!
To the venue, and it was perfect. It was an all day, nice weather in Margate, which never happens. It's just right on the coast. So yeah, so that was probably my first like DIY show. And then after that, one of the bands that played that day were called Attack Vipers, who are like a hardcore band from the UK.
Okay.
And they had a song. I don't want to say what it is. I was in a band before that was terrible. It was my first hardcore band. And we named ourselves after a song that they played that day. So I was like, this is amazing.
Of course.
And that definitely led on to like everything else that came after that, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a cool show.
And so like once you started to get into this stuff, was it difficult for your parents to be like, oh, like it's great he's into music, but this is some weird stuff?
Yeah.
Like because, and especially too because I'm sure they had an interesting experience with your brother doing a lot of, you know, stuff that they didn't understand as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So like they had it from 2 completely different angles.
Yeah, with Ross, my brother, it was sort of he did his own thing. He just disappeared, came back in the morning, and it was like, we know that you're having a good time. You're like doing whatever you're doing, it's fine. Like just keep at it, sort of thing. I remember the first time he was in like a drum and bass like group, which I didn't even know was a thing, but they were out in Barcelona and they made a music video, and because they were doing quite well. And the first time we saw that was just like a few years ago when he was living out there, and I think that was like the moment where me and my parents were just like, "Oh, okay, this is like a legitimate thing."
Right.
Like,
yeah. Well, that's funny that you had that experience too, where you were just like, "Oh yeah, whatever." My brother's dicking around with some stupid stuff, and then you're like, "Oh, like other people are finding worth in what he's doing." Yeah. That's funny. So you had a parents' experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, with as soon as I got into hardcore, my mum was pretty bummed. I think it's just because like it went from. I would learn like Red Hot Chili Peppers songs on guitar, and she's like, that's like, just nice music to listen to, and then it would be like Converge and like I don't know whatever else it was. I can't remember the first hardcore bands I got into, but just loud stuff that she couldn't make out the words to, and
of course
she was pretty bummed. Right. And every time my hardcore bands in the past played anywhere locally, like if I was stuck on getting a lift there or whatever, they would always help me out, and they were really supportive in that way. No chance I would ever come into the venue though.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
They would never do it. But this, like, as soon as we started this band, from the get-go pretty much, they've been like really, really supportive. They're like completely into it. My mum still every now and then is like, I don't understand why Eddie has to shout the lyrics. And I'm like, you've heard the bands I've been in before. Like, he's not shouting in this.
Right. You're like, hey, if you're looking at all the stuff I've done, this is by far the least aggressive.
Yeah, if anything was to be on the radio, it's this, like, as opposed to anything before. Like.
Totally. I presume your first band you like didn't. What was the first band that you started to like tour with? You know, I mean, when I say tour, it's like obviously like like you said, play shows outside the.
Yeah. It's weird in Kent because there's so many little local venues that will put on shows for local bands to try and literally get 15 people in for the night to keep the bar open. And So you can survive, not survive, but like,
right. But yeah, you can play
a lot of shows in.
It's usually at bars, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it 18 plus or 16 plus?
It depends on the place, okay. But most of them are 16 plus.
Okay.
Especially because a lot of the bands are 16 plus at that time. Like it was like we started bands in college, and looking for shows was always like local bars and stuff, and they would just let us play in there for the night and bring a few people in, but it was it was never anything great. But the first band, like touring wise, would be in Alaska. I played bass in that band, which was like a hardcore band. It was on Fist in the Air Records as well.
Oh yeah, sure.
And we toured the UK with a band called N Rain. We put out a split 7-inch with them.
Okay.
And we went to Europe with them. We did like 3 dates in Europe. And played with Naysayer and Full of Hell out there as well.
Sure.
So that was awesome. Just to be able to go to a different country and play with good bands was like such a treat for us, as opposed to playing with like the local bands every week or whatever. Sure.
Did that kind of start opening your eyes up to be like, oh wow, like this is, not only is this cool, but like this is so strange being somewhere else. Like
the first tour we did was the Weekender in it was mostly Germany. I think it was Germany and Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
And you get treated so much better in Europe than you do in the UK as well. Like I don't know what it's like in the States, but
it's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, like mainland Europe and like Japan and Australia, they completely take care of their bands. I didn't know the UK was. The UK is probably similar to over here, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But it's probably maybe a little bit worse. I don't know. I mean, because basically you're just left, like, as a touring band in the States, like, you're just kind of left to your own devices.
Yeah,
like, you show up at a place. Like,
I think maybe it might be different because of the level we were at. It, like, sort of still didn't matter at that point.
Sure.
But literally, we got to Germany the first day, and the guy was like, oh, I've cooked, like, a vegan meal, and this is where you're staying tonight. And we were like, sweet. Like, we didn't know any of this was going to happen. Like, we brought money for food and, like, sleeping bags, and we were expecting to get, like, a hotel or something that we can't afford. Like, So, yeah, that was amazing. The UK, I think, gets better as, like, especially with when American bands come over, the promoters obviously know they're making a big effort to come here, so everyone's willing to help out for stuff like that.
Right, is willing to like take care of them more than they would. Like,
definitely.
Just whatever the local band. Or
whatever. Definitely.
You know, as you started to kind of move through, because I mean, it sounds like you played in a million hardcore bands before, like
quite a few.
And so were you just kind of like, oh, we'll get Danny to play? You were just kind of the default dude that people.
I think I was from when I left school till probably just before the start of this band, I was always in at least like 3 bands at one time, and it would be different things. Like I was in a band with Kyle before, that was like a pop punk kind of thing. We were together for like 2 or 3 years maybe, but like barely ever practiced. Wrote an EP that didn't get released and played one show with Basement and Daylight and then broke up, and that was
perfect.
It.
Nailed it.
It was like all we needed to do, like the perfect thing for us.
Right.
And then I was in a bunch of hardcore bands. My first hardcore band were absolutely terrible, and we did a split CD with Departures, and that's how I first like
met those dudes.
I actually went up to, my brother was living in Scotland at that point. I think it was about 2008 maybe.
Okay.
I just finished college. I went up to a festival called Tea in the Park, which is like a
huge festival,
festival in Scotland. And Departures were playing, I think it was like an introducing stage.
Okay.
And I got given a little business card type thing that just said Departures for fans of Gallows and like Glassjaw or something like that. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll check them out. And it had their stage time on. I remember Trainer, I'm pretty sure their guitarist, had bleached blonde hair. I hope he listens to this. Bleached blonde hair, some sunglasses hanging from his t-shirt, and it was like a bright yellow Outbreak shirt with the sleeves cut off.
Okay.
And I was like, these guys are cool. Straight away.
You're like, I'm on. I'm on.
Yeah, and just hearing Kino shout, and I was just like, this is perfect. This is like the best band. And then I went home, and that band that I was in were looking to do a split, and I just said to Jamie at Fist in the Air, I was like, you need to get this band's Departures from Scotland, and that's where it all like started with those guys.
Yeah.
It's cool that we're like still like best mates with them now.
Right. Yeah, that you can grow in your own personal endeavors, but still remain close. I mean, as I've grown older with like in music, it's like some of the most meaningful things that I've ever created have just all been just relationships, just the people that it's like. You can not see a person for like a year, but then like jump right back into it and just be like, oh, dude, like, not only is it good to see you, but like, let's do the 5 minutes of catching up and then just like, and then we're right back into it. It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
What I always find interesting too is the way that the impressions that are left, not only like culturally, the way that, maybe you view America, but then also like the music that comes out of America. Like, so what impressions, like, maybe not so much like, what you're experiencing, like what your impressions are right now, but like what sort of things did you look at where you're just like, oh man, like American bands are the best, like what, like how did that stuff all kind of sit in your head? And like what, you know, the views of America in general, now that you've obviously had some small experience over here.
Yeah. I wish we could have gone to a show over here, because that would have been really cool to see. But yeah, I think we were really stoked on like the whole Philadelphia scene, when like the amount of bands that are popping up from there as well, and seeing like footage. I remember seeing footage from just basement shows and being like, this is incredible. Like, we don't have that back home. Like, maybe there's like 1 or 2 places in like England that can do it. Right. But it's such a rare thing, and it's always just shows for best friends, and that's it. Like, to see a video and you're like, oh, that would have been cool. So like,
that's interesting. So it's like the concept of just like not so much a show, but just the intimacy of like playing in a basement and seeing that basically everyone looks like they know each other. Yeah.
It just seems so fun to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I wish we could do that back home.
No, it's true. I mean, that's a distinctly East Coast / Northeast thing. Just because, I mean, you know, here in California in the West, we don't have basements. Like, and if we do have basements, like, you know, the sound ordinances, like cops come like almost immediately. It's like, you can't do house shows here. Like, you can to a certain extent. Yeah. But like you can do one maybe under the radar.
Where was the what was it? It might have been after Sound and Fury. There's like a Tiger's Jaw.
Oh, the Tiger's.
Yep. That was insane. That was the video from that. Just people on like the garage roof and stuff.
Totally. That was insane. Just because, and it was insane too, because it was like literally word of mouth, because the bands were just like, I think one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever experienced was, I mean, not only that whole incident, but having Carl from Earth Crisis come up to me and be like, hey, we just want to play. Like, do you know where to play? And I'm just like, here's this like icon for me. Yeah. And I'm looking at him in the eyes and I'm like, you are, you know, 40 some odd years old and you just want to play a fucking show and you can't do that. And that's awful. But yeah, no, and that was, I mean, yeah, and I know that got shut down pretty quickly. Yeah. Like, I mean, I think, you know, bands were able to play like 2 or 3 songs or whatever. But it's cool that is amazing. It's cool that was like that's the impression that you got, where it was like, oh wow, that's cool. That's like what you attached to. Yeah. What about like, you know, in impressions that you had in regards to like, you know, other certain areas of music that you were, you know, paying attention to, that was like, oh wow, like that's a really important, you know, what band or like, you know, area of the country. Like I find it so, because you're so isolated. Like, in so many respects, and I find that because of that filter of isolation, I find it interesting like what people pick out of that, you know, especially from a North American perspective. Yeah, it's hard to say really, because I think I'm trying to think of how things came together, because obviously as we were getting into music, like me and my friends anyway, it was like going from the transition from like MySpace and all the MySpace bands, and you see like their top friends, and you get into whoever was in that as well. Whoever's in the top 8, of course. And then like Bandcamp after that was quite useful, being able to look through the tags and stuff on that. Sure. But it was hard to, I don't know that I specifically would have been paying attention to a certain area or what was coming out of a certain area, or just like taking in literally whatever I could. Right. Like, and that's what I find so interesting too, because, well, you said you're 24, right? Yeah. And I do find like there are so many things that, I mean, obviously the internet has done amazing things for music, and you know, how easy it is to get your music out there. The thing that I find interesting too is the fact that it's like, it's difficult to have a context. So it's like, you know, using you for an example, it's like you were popular on Bandcamp, looking at tags and being like, oh, I like this. Yeah. And like that is where, that's your first input, as opposed to, you know, other things where it's like, okay, you found, it's like, oh wow, like I heard there's this scene in Washington DC or whatever. Like using these things, you kind of build a context where it's like, oh, I see all these other bands are friends or whatever. Like it's difficult to do that from like a Bandcamp page, you know? Yeah. And definitely. So it's just interesting that, you know, you reviewing it from the lens of like, I just want to put as much stuff in my head as possible. And then I'll figure it out as I'm able to like learn more. Yeah, just piece bits together. You're like, oh wait, they did a split with that band, and I know that band. Right. So a lot of internet sleuthing on your part. A lot of internet sleuthing, yeah. And the last sort of thing I want to hit on was, you know, now that you're in a band that obviously is, like you said, you know, kind of, you feel it's more real than anything else you've probably ever done musically. Yeah. As far as like, I'm not real from what you're creating, but real as far as like people paying attention to what you're doing. Definitely, yeah. Is it weird having all of is it weird having people pay attention to you? Definitely, yeah. From the start it was, yeah. So we played our first show in October 2012. Yeah. And then I went to the last ever basement show, last ever. Yeah, last ever. Like a month after that, and a guy
like tapped me on the shoulder at the end and was like, dude, you in that band Moose Blood? I was like, how the fuck? Like, what is going on here? He's like, yeah, man, I just checked you guys out the other day. I heard like the demo or whatever. It's like, I'm really into it. Like, I'm stoked to hear more. And I was like, that's ridiculous to me. The fact that straight away, like anyone knew who we were was insane. But it's been weird with this band because literally since the start, we put the demo up and like after a day, I had people who I didn't know like talking to me saying this is something good here. Like, you don't really know how to process that when you've been in a bunch of hardcore bands no one cared about. So,
right. Well, I mean, it's cool too because I think like just because since you guys aren't 16 or 17 years old, like I equate it like this. I look at like, you know, whatever you look at a person or you look at a band that starts to be successful when they are, you know, whatever, 15, 16, 17, whatever. They're still in their teens, in their formative years. It's the same concept of like, you know, child actors, where it's like if you're thrust into major stardom when you're, you know, 10 or 11, you have so many years to kind of navigate the weird alternate universe you live in. And like you obviously see so many stories of tragedy that happens where it's like, oh, they die of drug overdose or whatever when they're like, you know, 22 because they've been, you know, in the limelight for so long. And so, you know, it's interesting to hit it at an age where you're a little bit older.
You've got your head screwed on a bit more.
Right. Do you feel that? Like you feel like maybe it's weird, but you're able to kind of maybe process it easier in a way? Or?
I hope so, yeah. But it is still weird. I remember like following Paramore as they were coming up sort of thing. Right. And always thinking, because like with every new band that I'd start and would go nowhere, I'd be like, man, Paramore are killing it, and then my age, like, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? Like,
really?
Then, yeah, it was weird. And then it's one of those things. Every single band I've been in it because it was what I wanted to do and like the music that I wanted to play and stuff. Yeah. And this time we started it. It's me and Carl were in a band before that were doing this sort of stuff. Yeah. But I guess just not as well. We weren't as committed to it. But we've just had so much more fun with this one, and like every offer we get, we just say yes to it because why not? Because we're in a position where we can at the moment. Like we get offered like odd shows every couple of months at the start, and we just say yes to all of them, which led to more shows. And just people paying attention and being interested in it was amazing straight away. So I was like, I definitely want to put whatever I can into this to see how we can get on with it.
Right.
So, yeah.
And do you so you still compare yourself to Haley from Paramore?
Oh yeah, every day.
It's just so.
I mean, right now I'm in Hollywood, so I'm getting close.
Right now, I've made it to California, so I must be doing something right. But I mean, it is. You always have those like the funny thing I found out or I look at in regard to success. It's so funny because it's like you once you hit a point where you're like, oh my god, I want to do this. Like I really love to do this. Yeah. And then once you get there and you're just like. You maybe take in like 30 seconds of that moment, and then you're like, "But I want this next thing," and it doesn't like it's the endless like
it's an endless list of one-upping,
and then it's like like I said, when you do get to that moment, it's like it is meaningless. It's like that work that it takes to get there. It's just like oh cool. All right, well, what's next? But you waited your whole life for that moment to like play that one show in front of 400 people, and then like. That's gone. That's in the rear view.
That's literally one of the things that happened like last year. So with this band, I've had lists of things that I want to do because I remember hearing, and I think it was Evan from Into Over It on an interview somewhere saying about he sets goals for himself and he always tries to do it within like a year or whatever. Whatever he sets out to do, he's going to do it. I was like, that's kind of a cool idea. And I just like set out a bunch of it was just dumb things. Yeah. But I was like. Okay, so this year is for last year. I was like, I want to play a show with Tiger's Jaw. That happened. That was amazing when that happened. I want to play like certain venues, and we played like that Funeral for a Friend tour. We got to do Electric Ballroom. Oh yeah. The biggest venue I've ever played in. It was ridiculous. Right. And every one of them happened, and I was like, this is insane that this is even a possibility. Right. But the Tiger's Jaw show, I remember because we got offered. One show with them. When I heard they were coming over, I was like, we have to play because one of my old bands was meant to play with them the last time they came over. But their flight got delayed because it was snowing. So I was bummed. They were like one of my favourite bands, and they're the best guys as well. This time we got offered one show, and it was in Glasgow, and they could cover like half of our petrol, and like that was it. And I said yes.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure. I was like, I'll drive 8 hours to play at like 6 p.m. to no one, and then drive back home again because we have work the next day. Of course I'll do that. And then we got told we weren't allowed to do that because the funeral tour went through Glasgow like a month later, and we weren't allowed to book, like double book. Right. And then my friend Hannah, who I didn't know at the time, but we're friends now because she's an amazing person, just emailed the band, like, oh, my friends in Tiger's Jaw are staying at my house in Canterbury, and I want to put on a DIY show in like a practice room. Would you be up for playing? And I stared at the email for like 30 minutes, like, what the fuck? like yes, we want to do that. So as soon as that happened, I was like, that's one ticked off the list right
That's
there.
amazing.
Like, it was so, but that was one of the moments where, like you say, like, it was almost the opposite of that, like, where it happens and you just write it off. Like, for like a month after that, I was buzzing at the fact that it happened. I was like, that was perfect. Like, the best way for it to happen.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, that's good that you were able to, like, revel in that moment and be like, it's a great thing that we got to, that I got to experience that. And
Yeah, like, that's not going to happen again. So the fact that it did.
The fact that it did is incredible.
Yeah.
Well, then what are the next tick marks for you then, personally?
One of them for this year was just to record an album. So right now it's getting ticked off. It's ridiculous how well this is coming together and stuff. Like, I'm so stoked to get this out.
Yeah.
I don't want to say a couple of others.
That's fine.
There's some good ones though.
Okay.
If we come back here at some point, another one's getting ticked off.
Okay, another one's getting ticked off. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's the obvious ones, but I'm sure there's the ones that you want to keep close to your vest.
Yeah. One of them was playing with Brand New, and there was a festival, like an all-day type thing in the UK called Hit the Deck.
Oh yeah.
That Brand New played, and a bunch of my friends' bands played it, and we were here, so we couldn't. And I was like, to be fair, I'm here, so it's okay.
Right. It's a good trade-off.
It's not like I'm working or anything and I can't do it. So yeah, it's a good trade-off.
Right.
Yeah, playing with Brand New is definitely on the list because they're like all of our favourite band really in the band. I think that'd be incredible.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you hanging out and doing this, man. And of course, dude, it was fun. I could not turn down an opportunity to have you on this. Being as you were a fan of the podcast before, I'm just like, oh, you're here. This is perfect. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
There we go. There's Glenn. Like I said, just nice guy. Super chill. It was a very nice conversation. We had that actually at their recording studio when they were over here in the States, and that was a few months ago. But I had to get him on tape. And so I apologize if the audio quality is a little weird because obviously there is I think there's a refrigerator in the room. There was maybe some guitar work going on. So, recording studios are busy. But anyways, the producer for the show, as always, with me forever. He is never leaving my side, Tom Ridgefield. And visit propertyofzach.com. Visit 100wordspodcast.com. So here, you want another tease? I'll tease you. This upcoming week is an artist, a tattoo artist named Dave Quiggle. He has done artwork for a million different bands. He's also tattooed probably a lot of your friends. Super interesting conversation. Let me put it this way. He was scared to do the podcast. Pretty crazy, right? So anyways, next week is him. Let's meet up there then. I don't know why I'm being so dramatic. Until next week, be safe, everybody.